Cool, and welcome to this webinar. I am really glad you decided to join and see what we can do and how we can make it easier for you to manage SAP PI PO. We obviously also are doing a lot in CPI and API management space, but that's for a different topic. That's different areas of focus. And if you have any questions along the way, just put them into the chat. You should have a way to see the chat and be able to fill in your questions, and I'll try to answer them either here or towards the end. And if I forget about it, just retype your question. So the thing I wanted to cover today is, SAP's roadmap, at least as I see it, what's going on in that perspective. Then we will talk about transport and governance as the main part, and how you can automate this, how you can automate testing. And then we will talk about how to get started with figure out what's the reasons for using it and stuff like that. So that's what I wanted to cover. So this is my view on SAP Roadmap. If you're think it's wrong, then just let me know. So SAP just released the latest support package. I think it was 20 or something like that, and it contains a lot of small improvement around different topics that make sense for HTTP/2. Some reports has got some other roles and access. Small things around that has been a challenge whenever you've been doing PI work, and they have fixed it. I think there was like 15, something like that, of these different type of fixes. And then there was a couple of fixes on the PIT testing tool, some improvements in being able to run on older system, being able to insert different payloads whenever you're running these things. The biggest place where they had there were any changes happening was in the PI running PI on CPI, where there was a lot of things, and I think that is one of the places where you will see things happening and updates, because the smaller the gap between the cloud and your on-premise, the easier it is, because if there's a gap, you need to move back to these different settings and stuff like that. But as I see it, there's probably not gonna be a lot of new improvements, new adapters, or anything like that in the new future. And obviously it's supported into 2027 or 30 with extended support. And I think you don't really want to have a new upgrade or do a new upgrade with a lot of new functionality that you need to focus on and develop. So in that perspective, I think it's good that that's not going to happen. A lot of things there in it. And obviously the idea is that you at some point need to migrate to CPI, but a lot of use cases is really not there yet, that you need other ways to handle it. So you have huge data volumes, you need to be on premise. They will have an on-premise version of CPI, but there's still some flows that's not really as optimal, like EDI, and the governance model in CPI. We do solve some of these things, but that's for a different talk. I hope you see something of the same. Just there, put it into the chat. At least I know you are there, and I'm also in the same line as you are. And if we talk about SAP Integration, there is obviously quite a number of projects is going on. I can see the number of freelance requests I get is still pretty good. I think one of the things that we will see is there will be a lot more projects coming on and they need to be a lot faster because the complexity, because you need to simplify things. There's going to be more complicated solutions that you need to deal with. And I think it's pretty difficult to find good people. You can always find bad people, but finding the good people that can do a lot of integration is a challenge as I see it. So what is a good process? What's a good transport process? So this is something that I've been looking at and considered for all the time I've been working with SAP. So I started out, before I worked with SAP, I worked in IT auditing, where the idea was that you needed somehow to prove that the systems was running successfully, that no one was able to tamper with them. And a huge part of the SAP project is this thing about having role segregations, that people are not able to do fraud, and if they're able to do that, you need some other kind of controls to handle these things. So best practice or whatever is ITIL, but I think there's obviously all the other agile and stuff like that kind of correlate to a lot of the same concepts, the same ideas about how to deal with things. So the main idea is that you need to have a reason for each change to your landscape, like why an artifact has been changed, why something has been changed, or a configuration object. They all need to be linked to a Jira ticket or ServiceNow ticket, that you know this is the reason we created this. You need to create good documentation that developers know and can interact with, so you can actually see what has happened at a later point. It needs to be simple to perform, because if it's complex, people will not really do it, or forget it, or whatever. And then we talk about the audit trail. You need to be able to see at a given object, why was this changed at a given point in time. Does this make sense to you? Please, in the chat. And then we need to find out something about why things has been changed. Do you have a good practice in place for running tests, documenting these as a part of your release process? So some examples. I think the first one is an ITSM example. I've worked with a lot of clients that had different ways of handling these processes, and they were wildly different. So some were using CTS Plus, and some were just using file import export for a long period of time. And it obviously depends on what kind of organization you are, what kind of control you want over what's going on. But I do push that the more control you have over the process, the better it is. So an example, you need to create an Excel document, some different Word document, place it different locations. You need to ask an architect for approval, get basis to create transport, place the object into the transport document. Document what kind of configurations you needed to apply. Once that were done, you needed to have the architect approve the transport again, have basis imported to QA, have them configure it, and it's the same thing for QA and production. That really made it a lot of extra work. I think there was like 8 different interactions with different people along the way, and then sometimes it was really difficult to know where you are, which kind of processes did you need to work on dealing with these things. But the idea they had here was obviously they wanted to capture everything that was going on as a part of the process, and have this idea about, we know this has been changed because of the business asks for these things. There's obviously also the other process where it is a bit too simple, where you develop the change, move it to production, and then ask to test because you don't really have a good testing system in place. That's always a good thing. And I guess you could even skip this part because it's anyway in production, so it's more about minimizing the support of it. No documentation, no process and all. And this is polar opposite. It's really simple to work with. Or, well, once you figure out what the process is, that there is no process, you can do whatever you want. But it's also kind of frustrating to not really have a good process in place about how do I handle these different things? How do I make sure that things work in a specific way? So I wanted to just hear your thoughts on this. So I'll just So I created a poll. Oh. Great. Yes, so I logged in on a different device, which means that I cannot start the poll. No. So what I wanted to hear was two things, and if you want to put that into the chat, I would appreciate to have some kind of idea about it. You can just put it privately to me. So how many changes do you have a week? Is it like 500, 2, 5, 10, 15 changes or 100 changes a week? And then how long time do you actually spend on processing of these things? So all the way from filling in all the forms, communicating with the architect, communicating with people about how to deal with these things. Yeah, let's see. Why I cannot see this? Okay. I had prepared a survey. That's good. Okay, so let me also just a little about the cost of these things. Obviously, you spend a lot of time as developer basis prover to deal with it. Just for PI PO, that's the main topic here. For CPI, that's a different session that I will be sharing. Yeah, I'll host some other sessions on that topic. So yeah, you spend hours at developers basis writing tickets, requesting transport, all this manual work that you need to have as a part of this. And then you need to understand who's approving your transport and who's approving the architecture. And it is, yeah, your architect is a pretty scarce resource. I don't know many architects in companies that are just sitting and waiting for you to approve their transports. Either they're doing something really good and have real control over it, or yeah. But I think most architects are pretty busy and is in meeting all the time. And then obviously there's also some cost on this about how do you onboard people on the different systems that need to be a part of, all the PI system, all the training that needs to take place to get them to understand what the process is. So obviously, what's the most important thing? So if you find a bug, what's the impact of the business, and how will the process? So it's not just that you have support requests that you need to be involved in, that you need to fix. If there's a support request that's an order that's failing in the PI system, that's impacting the business because the order will not be processed, you will not meet the SLA and stuff like that. So it trickles down until that works out. And then you have to let the business wait, or will you get all of these people involved and get them to help with the support case? Okay. Now that was a little about what my ground for doing this was. So with the FIGAF tool, we started out creating a test tool, and once we built that test tool, we found out we actually needed to know a lot about the PI system, and then we just improved that functionality, so we were able to do a lot more about managing the transport handling changes, and then approve visibility, external APIs, communication channels, and documentations. So all of this is a part of this this process, and let me show you what we're able to do. So the idea is, in the FIGAF tool, you will go and you will see which changes do you have made to a number of different objects. So we have, before our call, we just started with a few changes, and the idea is here you can assign to a ticket. So the ticket concept here in the FIGAF tool is about understanding why you're doing things and being to record them. So you'll do a session on this, you will put in that URL number, Papa is just send me an email, then you can get access to some of these later technology or later webinars on these topics. So we will select the landscape. We do support two types of transport, with CTS or without CTS. I will show without CTS because I think that works a lot easier. And yeah, as Tyre writes here, there's active controls by basic technologies that are able to take some of these changes, but that is only going to handle part of it, but not really the depth of what's going on. So the FIGAF tool is, and if we're talking about PI, it's an on-premise application that you need to install on your system that will give you access to run and manage all of these things. And the idea is that it continuously download all your objects from your PI system, and then you have full version control, and I will show you what that's able to give you. It's installed outside of the PO system. We run it in a separate Java installation. So here we have the different objects that I've now made a change to. I can check my message mapping, and I have an option here that says versioning, and here I can do compare, and we have a number of different ways to compare objects in. So we can either do just the payload, or for some objects we have an internal way of handling this comparison. And in this case, for message mapping, we can create an Excel document on this. So here we can see between these two different versions, there was a parameter here that was changed, and there was also some down here that was changed. So we can see on all objects what they changed, both depending on what object, either it's in the XML format or in an Excel format as we have here. So that was part of these changes. For my communication channel, I can also see what was the differences between these things, and this is one of the things we have on all objects, also in CPI, that you can see for all objects what's really different in these. So we can see here I made a change to the poll interval, always a good thing to make changes to. So it's pretty easy to find out what was changed at any given point in time. So now we have created our transport, we have added some of these objects, and the next part is we want to be able to test this. And since we come from a testing tool, we can leverage all of these test cases that we already have. And the idea is that you build up a repository of all your test cases, and then you can see we have a number of different test cases here that we want to leverage. And what we can do is, you would obviously run all the test cases that you have, but that's just going to take a little longer time. So you would select it. You can then select where you want to run this test on as a part of your landscape. And what it will do is it will take these test messages, send them through the PI system, and then you will get a response, and it will then compare the response and see if this is working correctly. So let's see if it works. We have some different monitors here, so it should be approved successfully. Let me just try to run again. So we have a number of different ways that we can fetch messages per one, and here we're just using a built-in GMS, and we can see the messages we get here. There's some differences, and we can easily either ignore certain elements. We can see that there was a change here on a given element, and in this case it matches what we had, what our request was from the business. So what we can then do is we can just mark these, and then we can say, yes, next time we run it, this is what we would expect as a testing result. So now we have tested our solution. We can see what's going on, what's good, what's bad about these things. Next up is we'll start the transport. And yeah, because it's PO, it will create two transport, one for the directory objects and one for the repository objects. So the way we work is we just export, save it in the FIGAF tool, and then we can import them whenever we need. So we can look at the message mapping here, we can do comparison, we can send it to approval, and you can define if the user that creates the transport can approve or not. In this case, I'm able to do both, which makes something a little easier. For communication channels, we also have the option that you can go in, you can see all the attributes that you have as a part of this, and you can then make modifications along the way. So you don't need to apply these whenever you have imported. So if you're using the CTS transport, whenever the FIGAF tool sees that you have configured something or imported CTS transport, it will then say, there's a new communication channel, I need to apply the configuration channel. It will then take and update these configuration objects as you go along. So we save it. Questions along, just put them into the chat. I will also send this to approval and approve it. So now we have approved our transports, we can then start our import. And as you can see, all of this happens inside of the tool. We can also invoke this import via APIs, so we can integrate it with Jira, ServiceNow, whatever you're using to handle the transport. And if you're using CTS Plus, you will simply just schedule the system to look for changes every 10 minutes or 30 minutes. And then if it sees there's a CTS transport, it will start the configuration there. So now we will import also the configuration object. And what we can then see is, should I cancel this? That it have applied all of this successfully, and it's been deployed to our QA or test system. The test cases So yeah, could be sent to other systems. So for instance, once I've done with the report here, what I can do is I can create a report here that then shows these were the so these are this is the report of your transport. So here you have all the objects that's been transported in this. You have all the test cases that you run, and you have the status of these, what were successful, what were failing with these. So here we're getting the failed response. And you can also, if it was successful, you could also get these as CSV or Excel file, and then you could upload it to whatever testing suite that you have as a part of this transport. Hope that answers the question. Yes, let's take that. So here, I will get to the difference between the FGAF and the PIT tool a little later. And here we can see everybody who created it, who approved it, and if they approved what kind of text did they write for the approval of these things. So with this, we got one full view of everything that has been transported and configured as a part of our release strategy. And then there's obviously you need to write something about what you've done or what the change, and if it's a new integration, you need to write a little about what this is doing. But all the registration of changed object, all the registration of different things is all happening in the tool. All approvals and stuff like that is happening inside of here. And that means that if I'm at a later point in time going to my productive system, I can actually see for given objects what were the different versions we have of it, who approved it at a given point in time. So I'm not just reverting the same message mapping again and again, what was actually happening here. So we have a full history, and we can go back and forth and see who made which changes fully visible. So that was a little on the transport process. Any questions on that? But the idea is this thing about speed up the governance process, being able to make it easier for everybody involved in the transport, save time, improve the audit. And then the idea is that you just have one tool to do all your tasking, from development, governance, testing, and all the way on to also support, figuring out what kind of alerts that have occurred, and link this also to changes. So we can also look at alerts that have occurred, set up rules for how to deal with these things. Okay, next up is testing, and the reason why we're testing is to make it easier for developers to test the solution. Sometimes when you're working and you work on an interface you don't really know about, it's really difficult to be able to test and see if it works correctly. You will have some kind of a message mapping that you can try to run and see if it gives a result. If it's run successful, you're good. If it does not, you know there's something wrong and you need to figure out how to deal with it. And that's, yeah. So avoid some of these predictable error and avoid having to be involved with the business all the time. And then you can obviously cover what should be tested. So in PI 731, I've seen the message mapping changed a few times, which caused some problems. But I have not seen anything on 7.5 yet. So given the roadmap and where SAP is going, I think that the amount of changes that are going to happen on the message mapping is going to be pretty limited, and the number of support packages that you want. So it's good to be able to test and prove that it works, but it's probably not something you're gonna do too many times more. And then you want to be able to test after each change. So it does not. So with regards to the testing, and I think we have one more slide here. So the way it works is it works a lot like the PIT tool. So the concept is the same, that you want to take data from your productive system and then you want to replay them on your development system. So that could either be and so create some sales order, run them on your development system. There are some differences. We look at we can test the same way also in the message, in the normal ICO locking, but we normally recommend to use testing in modules, where we have added some modules that make it easier to connect and test with the tool. We think it's a little easier to use. I'll show you how to create test cases. And then obviously we're linking with the transport. And yeah, it's replay. It's for volume testing, and this is about testing all of these different cases that you do not really know exists. So obviously in some cases, you know, there needs to be a certain number of lines and stuff like that. If you start going out in the more complex scenario, it becomes a lot more difficult to be able to deal with these things. And then we support comparison, XML, EDIFACT, JSON, and we also have options to handle confident data that the user would never see any of the data, but it will all be masked between some masked data. You can see if it's a number or a character, a variable. And you can also replace some of these values for it. So I hope that covers the differences, what we can do. We will not give you a screenshot of these things, but it will have all of the messages inside of it, and you can create the reports, as you saw before, that shows what are the differences between these things. And obviously you can always fetch the messages that's being delivered here. So just briefly on how to cover these things. So the idea is here we will connect to a given PI system. We can then search for a number of interfaces. We can select multiple icons. We can record here. We can add it to a new test case. So the idea is you will bundle all of these into test cases. We have a number of different options that you can extract partner information. So if you're having EDI messages, it makes a lot of sense to extract partners message. Yeah, you can set up that it needs to collect messages from these 3 or 5 partners and these 3 type of messages. Let's just skip that for now. And then the idea is that you select it for a number of different messages that you want to look at. And then you just wait until you receive the number of messages, and it will handle that all the way automatically. So let's see if we get any messages. No. And then I need to go in and activate these communication channels. Just a sec. So we can process messages. Any other questions along the way? Okay, so let's see if I have processed these. So for some of these, there has been processed messages, which is good. So what we can then do is we can actually just click here to create test cases. And now we have created test cases for a given scenario. If we could extract these different things, messages or partners. So messages could be that it's invoice or credit memo, and partners would be EDI partners. So this is all about what kind of messages you're dealing with. And then it's just about, you can take it and you can run it on a given system, and then it'll take this message, send it through, download the response, and you can see if there's any errors. You can go and set up different comparisons, saying if it's this partner, we want a specific comparison. Alvaro, is that gonna help you? And once we have processed this, we can export all of this to a CSV file or an Excel file that gives us information about what has been ignored, what was the run and success that we have here. Yes. So yeah, that's a number of ways you can extract this and put it somewhere else, either as a part of the transport or as a part of a test case that you create and run, and you can obviously schedule these and send them nightly. Any other questions? Put them into the chat. So FigAff tool deployment. So how much does it cost? And obviously, what's the business case for it? So mentioned here, it took like 2-4 hours to do transports. And yeah, that depends a lot on what your goal, how much you want to achieve with it. And yeah, there's a lot of people that need to be involved. If you're one of the guys that has the simple process and just transport things, it's probably not a huge saving, but at least it will give you a much better understanding about what you have as a part of your transport, making it easier to gain confidence in your system. And yeah, if it takes 4 hours, 300 euros to do changes, and obviously it depends on your rate and governance process, we start at like 1,500 euros a month. So 5 changes is all you need to get this involved, where it starts to make sense. And then the idea is obviously you can deliver faster, you can make it easier for developers to do code. And I think one of the things that I really think this makes it easier is that it let developers focus on creating integration and not on all the governance processes. And I think one of your guys also mentioned that there was a lot of copy-paste creating all of these documentations towards the end. And let me just show you what we have also in that perspective. I guess that simplifies some of the processing. So if we look at our ticket we created here we can see that in the QA we have this ICO, and we can just click here, scenario documentation. Oh. And here we can see the scenario documentation. We can see all the changes that have happened on it. We can see all the basics information about the sender channel, which modules has been applied on it, receiver, outbound communication, all of these different things that you would normally copy paste back and forth between the scenarios. So I hope that is also something that would help skip some of the processes about these things. So it's about faster time to market, and then it's just that you need one tool that can handle all your SAP integration, both PI, CPI, and API management. And the process of delivering will be the same no matter which of these processes that you need. Deployment options. So we have a number of different ways you can run it. If you want to test with PI, you obviously need to have it installed somewhere where you can get access to your PI system. so on your on-premise or in your Azure AWS data center. It can run on a laptop, and it takes like 5 minutes to get started. Then you need to connect to the different agents. And obviously, if you want to run in production, you need a good scalable database that you can set up and run. And obviously, the load on the database and the application depends primarily on how many test cases you have. So for some of our clients that have a lot of test cases, they need a fairly big PC or a server. But if you have a limited load of test cases, that's not really a big thing, big server requirements. And it's pretty easy to manage and upgrade and stuff like that. We talked about the price. So we start out at 1,500 euros a month for managing 100 ICOs. So the way we are pricing this is per ICO that you're handling. And then it supports the full process, as we've seen here, with transport, documentation, test cases. And we also have a way to handle your component-based methods alert, setting up filtering, make it easier for you to manage these things. So yeah, if you just have more than 5 changes a month, this is a good idea. And yeah, then you will start to save time on these other things. And the part is that we are licensing only on the ICOs that you're actually using the tool for. So if you have a lot of ICOs that you're not really using the tool to transport or test, they are not really licensed. So that makes it a lot easier. So next steps is, book a session with me, schedule a meeting. You have my email, so if something does not fit into your calendar, or have some other questions, send me an email. If you want to try out how the tool works, there is a 30-minute installation of how you install, set it up, run, and it is pretty easy, I would say. But obviously there's from time to time different challenges getting up. Then drop us an email and we will help you through that process. Any questions? I think that was all I wanted to cover for today.